Osogbo, Part 5, EBO, the Restorative Principle. By now we've come a long way in this series, right? First we learned that Osogbo isn't simply bad luck. Then we discovered that the Ajogún aren't random forces or emotional enemies moving without any order. After that, we looked at Ori and saw how it governs access, response, clarity, and our inner position. Then we stepped into a harder truth. We saw that sometimes we help open the door ourselves through repeated patterns, poor discipline, inconsistency, and choices that pull us out of alignment. But now we arrive at the closing question. Not just what is Osogbo, not even why does it enter. Now the question becomes, how is balance restored? And that's where EBO enters the conversation. But let's be clear. When we talk about EBO, we're not talking about a trick. We're not talking about a quick fix. We're not talking about something you do today and suddenly every problem disappears tomorrow. EBO is something much deeper than that. In the teaching of this house, it's presented as the restorative principle. That's powerful. Because restoring isn't the same as covering something up. Restoring isn't hiding the problem. Restoring isn't making the outside look better while the inside stays broken. Restoration means bringing something back into its proper order. It means addressing the condition that allowed the imbalance to grow. It means working so Osogbo no longer dominates the path. That's why not every Osogbo is handled the same way. Not every person needs the same EBO. Not every difficulty has the same root. That's why consultation exists. That's why Ita exists. That's why elders exist. Because no one should be inventing their spiritual life as though this were a game. When someone is living under Osogbo, the first responsibility is to understand what's actually happening. How far has it reached? What's creating the condition? What can still be corrected? What must be removed? And what EBO actually belongs to that situation. Not out of fear, not out of superstition, but because the remedy should always correspond to the condition. That's where many people lose their way today. They want one ritual for everything, one candle for everything, one cleansing for everything, one quick answer for everything. But serious spiritual formation doesn't work that way. If the problem has roots, the solution has to reach the roots too. A properly understood EBO isn't simply about removing something. It's about calling life back into order. It's about asking for divine assistance. It's about carrying a sincere petition. It's about inviting the forces of good to help restore peace where imbalance has taken hold. But this is equally important. EBO never replaces personal responsibility. It supports it. It strengthens it. It accompanies it. It never substitutes for it. Because if you perform EBO, but keep feeding the same disorder, keep making the same decisions, keep opening the same doors, keep living in ways that contradict your own Ori, then basically you're asking for balance with your words while maintaining imbalance through your actions. And that needs to be said clearly. EBO wasn't given so a person could stay the same. EBO was given to begin the work of restoration. And whenever restoration is genuine, something changes. Sometimes the environment changes. Sometimes the pressure changes. Sometimes the road opens. But very often, the first thing that changes is the person. Because Osogbo may knock on your door, but you don't have to keep inviting it into your home. That's the point. EBO helps remove the obstacles, but it also calls you to walk differently, to think differently, to respond differently, to honor your ori more deeply, to honor your lineage, to respect the guidance you've received, and to stop treating sacred instructions like a suggestion. Because if consultation gives you light, but you keep walking with your eyes closed, then the problem isn't a lack of light. It's a refusal to follow what you've already been shown. And when I say obedience, I'm not talking about blind submission to another person. I'm talking about listening to what you already know is true. I'm talking about stopping the fight against your own correction. I'm talking about accepting that some things have to change before the road can truly open. That's why EBO is restoration, because its purpose is to move a person from disorder back to order, from Osogbo toward Ire, from confusion toward clarity, from conflict toward stability. And that doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it begins with a cleansing, sometimes with a head rogation, sometimes with a prescribed work, sometimes with an offering, sometimes with an honest conversation with your elders, sometimes by leaving behind a destructive habit, sometimes by asking forgiveness, sometimes by returning to your ancestors, sometimes by finally doing what you were instructed to do when it was first given to you. But in every genuine case, EBO points toward the same destination, restoration. And let me leave you with one final reflection. Today, we live in a time where anyone can post an EBO for money, an EBO for love, an EBO to open roads, as though every person were walking through the same spiritual condition. Our tradition never taught that. EBO doesn't begin with someone's idea. It doesn't begin with a video. It doesn't begin because something went viral online. EBO begins with a real need, discerned with a living system, interpreted with foundation, and guided by those entrusted with that responsibility. Because the very EBO that helps one person may not belong to another. Our tradition has never been a collection of spiritual recipes. It's a structure. It's a path. It's a living relationship between Ori, Egun, Orisha, consultation, guidance, action, and good character. Iwapele. When we break that structure, we stop walking with foundation and we begin improvising. And improvisation has never been a substitute for tradition. That's where this series comes to its close. Osogbo is real. The Ajogún are real. Heavy forces are real. Difficulties are real. But restoration is real too. The way back is real too. And that path isn't walked through fear. It's walked through awareness, through respect, through guidance, through Ori, through Egun, through Orisha, through good character, Iwapele, through discipline, and through EBO, when EBO truly belongs. Because the goal was never to spend your life afraid of Osogbo. The goal is to recognize it, to understand it, to know how it moves, to know when it's present, and to learn how to walk it back toward Ide. That's what it means to walk with foundation. That's what it means to stop reacting as though life were only chaos. That's what it means to begin living with the understanding that there is order, there is process, and there is responsibility. With this, we close our journey through Osogbo. Not because we learned everything, but because we built a foundation strong enough to approach it without fear and without ignorance. Now, we're ready to continue building. In our next series, we'll turn our attention to elekes, not as jewelry, not as fashion, but as a step of formation, protection, commitment, and respect within the rule of Ocha. Ache, Paso Firme, no da Cambio. I am Steve Vargas Betancourt, truth seeker, knowledge keeper, builder of what must be rebuilt. Ache.